Thank you, Mr. Chair. So for my ED report, I need to focus on current events, right? And so I'm really going to limit it to the Lake Okeechobee System Operating Manual and recent events that came out last Friday. So let's talk about LOSUM. It's been an incredible 2 to 3 years that we've been working as a board, as staff, on the new manual for Lake Okeechobee that will come out after the Herbert Hoover Dike is repaired. It's been an incredible process by the Corps of Engineers, and I thank you, Colonel Polk, for putting together that process of engagement for our communities, the public, the PDT, Project Development Team, and this board itself. It's been transparent, it's been engaging, and Colonel Kelly and Colonel Booth have personally invested time in making sure that all of our stakeholders are engaged. And we have seen the benefits that can come out of that kind of engagement with their preferred alternative. The Corps working with us, has produced a preferred alternative that benefits our coastal communities. It benefits water supply. It benefits the Everglades. It benefits recreation. There's so many benefits coming out of that process that are just incredible and that we need to marvel with. We're still engaging with them on the state rights for the water, and we're having very positive dialogues along that front. And they will be releasing their parts of their draft manual language at the next PDT meeting, which will be in early March. And we look forward to seeing what they're doing along with those lines. But then last Friday, the Senate put out their Appropriations Act. And along with that Appropriations Act, they introduced Senate Bill 2508. Now that Senate bill is a conforming bill. And conforming bills are supposed to be bills that adjust policies necessary for specific appropriations. This conforming bill made major policy changes with respect to this lake schedule. And conforming bills have limited public engagement. They have one stop, which was Wednesday at the Senate Appropriations Committee, where public comment was provided. That was it. That's why conforming bills have a limited scope. But this conforming bill did not. First of all, it amended Senate Bill 10. And you may remember that Senate Bill 10 went through an incredible legislative process, lots of committee stops, lots of investment, lots of people at the table expressing their opinion, and quite frankly, lots of modifications to the bill before it was done and agreed upon and voted by virtually every legislator in the Florida Senate, if not every, if I recall. But it amended that. And when it comes to funding, it took the EAA reservoir and it struck it. And it said this funding is not just for the EAA reservoir, which we had all agreed upon, it's for other reservoirs and storage facilities as well around the state. So it diluted the funding away from the EAA reservoir. And obviously, that reservoir, as you know, 2 weeks ago, is a Governor DeSantis priority, where he called on the federal government to get that funding going for the EAA reservoir for our coastal communities. So it went beyond that. It set policy for the Water Management District for Lake Okeechobee schedules. It said the policy that we need to champion is not only reducing harmful discharges to the estuary, but also providing a virtual guarantee for water supply, keeping that lake higher to guarantee water supply as a policy. Now, we all know that keeping the lake higher puts our coastal communities at risk of those harmful discharges that devastated them in 2016 and 2018. And in fact, Governor DeSantis, when he came into office in 2019, he worked with the Corps of Engineers, President Trump at the time, and he said, let's lower this lake, let's give relief to our coastal communities. And he took action with the Corps to lower the lake, which had direct benefits that same year when Hurricane Dorian was breathing down upon us, and we did not have to resort to prolonged harmful discharges on our coastal communities. It worked. So these policy changes essentially ask us to give water supply a guarantee, and then ask us to do what we can with the environment after that. Now, you may hear that we're already supposed to do that. That's already in state law, but it is not. It is not. There's nothing in state law that says regulation schedules must attain minimum flow and levels. There's nothing in, you may hear about this 1 in 10, the amorphous 1 in 10, right? That is not in state law or regulation that metric applies to regulation schedules for Lake Okeechobee. It's a side issue. It's what we do for the permitting program. But it is not a legal requirement for regulation schedules. So this is new. This isn't restating what we're already supposed to do. Now, not only did it give us new policies, but it also tied our hands on our ability to pay invoices. We get appropriations to build incredible SERP projects for the state of Florida for the benefit of our communities all across South Florida. And what it's telling us, this bill, is it says they will not, when we hire a contractor to build incredible projects, they send us invoices. And when we send those invoices up and try to get the money to pay those contractors, this bill says we're not going to give you the money unless you follow these policies I just outlined. And you certify to us that you've done that. I feel bad for those contractors. So, we need to provide water supply, right? I mean, water supply is important for people. We've been championing that this whole process, the whole 2.5 years. We've been championing it for people on our coastlines with discharges, people inland on water supply, and we've made improvements on all those parts with balance, okay? With balance, not favoring one over the other. Now, and we know it works. For the last 3 years, we've been trying to operate this system with balance. We've been able to nourish the Everglades. We've allowed our estuaries to recover from harmful discharges over the past 3 years. And we've met all water supply demands over the past 3 years. That's what Governor DeSantis challenges us, so that's what you're doing, is providing this balance in this system to try to do everything we can. So, the last thing I want to point out is this Senate budget proposal. A lot of people have looked at the draft bill, but also look at the Senate budget proposal. Because that budget proposal says that the SERP appropriations for the EAA Reservoir project and Central Everglades project for the Everglades, the appropriations for the C-43 Reservoir for the West Coast, for the C-25 Reservoir for the Indian River Lagoon, and for the Cutler Wetlands project for Biscayne Bay, and for the Miami-Dade Seepage Wall for the Everglades National Park in Florida Bay, will not get funds unless this bill passes. It's basically holding the whole South Florida ecosystem restoration program hostage over this bill. So as you can tell, Governor DeSantis gave us a challenge, and we've been executing that challenge. And this last-minute bill is an affront to that challenge. Chairman Goss went up to the legislature yesterday and spoke before the committee to express our concerns. And I would like to right now turn this over to Chairman Goss to report on that committee meeting for the benefit of this board. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Bartlett, very much for that. And I will bring you up to date on what happened when we testified yesterday or spoke to the committee and some of the senators before that. I'd like to change the agenda a little bit on the fly here and do board comment before public comment so that we can just morph this discussion. I want to hear from you all. I have not talked to, obviously I haven't talked to any of you about this. We just found out about it, I think I found out over the weekend, and then ended up going to Tallahassee right after that. So we're not allowed to talk anyway, but we need to hear from this governing board, and I think the governing board needs to have this discussion amongst ourselves and with our executive director and with our incredible staff so that we all understand exactly what's happening here and what the implications and ramifications of this are. The first thing I'll say is I can't tell you how fortunate we are to have Drew Bartlett as our executive director. Traveling to Tallahassee with Drew is really helpful to me. He knows the system. Obviously he knows South Florida water system better than anyone. He also knows Tallahassee very well, and he's got a tremendous amount of respect. So having Drew up there was phenomenal. We had a number of meetings with Senate Appropriations Committee senators prior. Let's see, that must have been Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday night, and we expressed our concerns, and I'll tell you what our concerns were in a nutshell, and that's what Drew alluded to a second ago, which is, we've been working on LOSUM for 3+ years with the Corps of Engineers. We've had tremendous amount of stakeholder input into that. I don't know how many meetings there have been, but there's been a lot of PDT meetings. There've been a lot of other meetings. It's the way the process should work. You hear from everybody, and you go ahead and you make your decision. And not only do that, but you look at your staff. I look at the staff at this organization, and having just heard some of those service awards and seen some of the other awards, that's just, again, we have tremendous depth here. And so you use that. You use the expertise of your hydrologists, of your geologists, of your water managers, of your modelers. And I know the Corps used our modelers quite a bit. So there's a lot that goes into this, and there's a lot that's gone into the LOSUM process. And I haven't loved everything all the time, but it's okay. I'm not supposed to. It's supposed to be a balanced process where everybody gives a little bit, and it's worked, and it's gone very well. And the reason we're doing that is because we're trying to make progress on what the governor told us to do, which is reduce discharges and move water south. And he asked for $2.5 billion. We're well on our way to getting that. We've got 43 projects that we've started, finished, had major milestones on. We've got just incredible momentum right now, and this bill concerned us, so we went to the Senate to say this concerns us because I think it stops that momentum. And secondarily, and I think this is a huge process, Val, and I've been doing government stuff all my life, no one consulted us about this. And why wouldn't you consult the expertise of this organization before you try and figure out how to reroute the water and resupply the water for 9 million people in South Florida, which is one of the most complex things in the world to do? How can you do that, in less than a week with one Senate meeting? It just doesn't make sense to me, and it doesn't strike me as being excellent government. So we conveyed that to the Senate. There was the hearing yesterday. I spoke, basically said what I just said, answered some questions not probably very well, or not to the liking of some of our friends in the Senate, but I didn't have much to say as our staff was still looking into this bill because we really didn't see it until Friday night, if anyone knew about it then, but over the weekend, and we're still working through it, trying to understand what the implications are, and Drew just gave a very good summary of that. So I wasn't the only one to speak. There was quite a bit of opposition at this hearing, and I think that the people who were opposed did a very good job of voicing their concern that we are making tremendous progress right now. And this is not the time to stop that progress because we owe it to our economy and to our environment in South Florida to get the water right. So I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to go over to Vice Chair Wagner because he's an attorney. He understands this probably way better than I ever will, and I'd love to hear his thoughts.
Thank you, and thanks for your efforts up in Tallahassee on short notice. When we joined the board, I think one of the priorities we all shared with one another from this dais and in front of you all was an effort to be as transparent and open as possible. And that meant for me to reach out and engage with a variety of different stakeholders in an effort to open communication lines to people to try to help in situations where there were problems or issues or concerns so that we would have an open line of communication and we could figure out whether we could work things out together before fights or issues were raised in a more sort of aggressive manner. That's why I was a little bit surprised to hear of the filing of the bill 2508 on Friday evening, sort of in the dark of night, as I understand it. I was away and out of town, and so on Saturday morning when I woke up in New York, I had a lot of messages and missed telephone calls on my phone of people who were deeply concerned about the language in 2508, which I had not seen and I was not necessarily aware of. And so my first call, and I just want to take you kind of down the journey that I've gone so that you all understand how I get to where I am ultimately going to conclude down the road on this. But my first call was really to Drew to say, had you heard about this? You know, generally there are things sometimes we don't hear about that the staff has been working on diligently, and when you ask them, have you heard about this, they go, of course, and they give you the briefing. This was not one of those situations. This was a situation where we were totally in the dark on a particular bill that relates directly to our operations, how we do what we do and manage water, and effectively how we were going to be conditioned to operate, or else you would not receive any budget releases. And so to me, this was a really big deal, and it was surprising to learn that we had not had any not even fair notice, but really no notice that this was coming down the pike or an opportunity to comment. There were obviously loud voices in the stakeholder community who were concerned about this, who were scrambling, who felt like this was an ambush or a sneak attack in the middle of the night, and everybody was sort of scrambling to understand what the consequences of this new language were as it related to the bill. And so I had effectively learned that this was filed late, that we had no notice, that not many people had an opportunity to understand what the language meant at the time. And my next question was, well, what is the process on this? What is the timeline? You know, do we have an opportunity? Does the public have an opportunity to comment? And that's when I first learned what a conforming bill was, because I'm not one of these Tallahassee insiders. I had no clue what that meant. They said, oh, it's a conforming bill. I said, okay, what does that mean? And apparently what that means is that it is shortcutting and short-circuiting the public comment process, that there would be only one opportunity for this bill to be heard in a Senate committee before it would end up on the legislative floor for vote. And so at that point I said, okay, well, I mean, when is that? I mean, this is like the weekend. When is the hearing? The hearing's on Wednesday. Okay, so one opportunity in Tallahassee. I mean, I think one thing everybody in Tallahassee agrees on is it's not necessarily the easiest city to get to. And so the next question was, do we have any plans to testify? Do we have a plan to make public comment at this Senate committee to voice our concerns? And the answer was yes, and I was pleased to hear that both Drew and Chauncey were going to take the time. You know, obviously a lot of work goes into our governing board meetings, which were happening today on Thursday. They were going up to Tallahassee on Wednesday. So, but I was pleased to hear it. And then I heard that there would actually be sort of a cavalry, if you will, of stakeholders who were all mobilizing, all were concerned, all who basically dropped everything they were doing on a moment's notice to come from all parts of the state up to Tallahassee. And I felt, you know, generally confident that those folks who are dialed into these issues on a daily basis would have an opportunity to present and basically to make public comment before the Senate committee to voice their concerns. And so yesterday I tuned in. I had an opportunity to watch the proceedings on the Florida channel. And quite frankly, I was a little bit, because I did feel, I mean, I certainly felt that something was afoot. I mean, I didn't feel like this was traveling the natural course of a typical policy bill. It felt like it was filed in the in the nighttime, that was end-running public discourse, that nobody had seen the language or even heard of the language, that it was a conforming bill. It just felt like something that was being tied to the budget. I mean, tied to the big budget, tied to our budget. It felt like all these factors would lead anybody to conclude something is afoot. And so I watched the hearing, and to me, actually, I went into the hearing thinking to myself, oh, these guys are going to take care of business and everything will be fine, because there's it just is what it is, and all the captains and guides and hotel people were coming up. I felt they would be very powerful. But when I listened to the hearing, it sort of took a little bit of a turn for me. I have to be honest with you. I felt like many of those who came with hat in hand and their hearts on their sleeves, and who live their livelihood every day on the water, and who love Florida, and who dropped and paid to lost profits from their business on a particular day and flew up on a moment's notice and stayed in a hotel and rented a car, I'm sure, and did all these things to present themselves before the Senate. Quite frankly, I felt like they were, by some, belittled. I felt like they were insulted. I felt like they were told they didn't know what they were talking about. I felt like they were told that they didn't know how to cross-reference statutes against statutes, and therefore they shouldn't have been there. I felt like they were told that they had been misled or defrauded, and that they showed up on false premise. I'll be honest with you, it really irritated me. I thought there were regular, everyday people who were being unfairly singled out to cite chapter and verse from a statute that came out on a Friday evening. In my world, the onus is not on the citizens to explain the bill to the Senate. It's on the Senate to explain the bill to concerned citizens. And so to me, I felt people battling with people over the word notwithstanding, okay? Telling people they needed to cross-reference Florida statutes and they didn't know how to do it, and therefore effectively they were dumb. I found that to be aggravating. And so as my emotions sort of rose over the course of the hearing, I just decided I was going to drop everything and dive into this, because I am a lawyer and I do know how to read a statute, and I do know how to cross-reference statutory language. And I was curious, genuinely curious, notwithstanding the way that people were treated. Notwithstanding the way people were treated, I was genuinely curious as to whether the community who was concerned, their concerns were misplaced, or were they over-exaggerated, or were they just confused? Or was it maybe the senators who had been confused? Because I don't think necessarily there's malintent there. Maybe they had been confused as well. Maybe there was something they weren't being told. And I just decided, listen, I'm going to dig into this thing yesterday, and I spent, the following 12 hours basically before this hearing diving into 2508 and trying to figure out what was going on. Was this a policy change, or was this merely, as it was sold, when I listened to the hearing, it seemed like what was being said was, this is not a policy change. We are merely asking the district to certify something they are already required to do. And so no big deal, okay? Now, I found that to be a little bit odd, because if it's no big deal and it's some sort of pro forma perfunctory statute that has really no effect on anything, why would you jury rig and tie this thing to the budget? Why would you booby trap this thing and hold the entire Florida budget hostage and hold all the funds to the water management district hostage if this was just no big deal? We just want a little report card from you guys on things that you're already doing. That to me sounded not right. It just didn't sound like something you would do. So I dug into this, and here's what I think. Here's what I think is going on. I'm just going to tell you from my point of view what I think is going on. About a year ago or so, we had started to kick off more serious discussions on the direction of LOSUM. And as part of those hearings that we had here, people in the agricultural community came to implore us to use the savings clause in the LOSIM process. And there was a lot of discussion back and forth. And ultimately, I think most people looked at the statute, and I was a big let's read the statutes. Let's read the law. But when I did, it became utterly clear to me that the savings clause was for SERP. The federal savings clause is for SERP. The Florida savings clause, which may not apply because it's Florida versus a federal thing, had to do with SERP. But it was very clear to me it did not have to do with LOSIM at the time. And and that kind of thing sort of went away. And then there was a lawsuit filed on the savings clause by the sugar industry. It had to do with the EAA reservoir project. I don't think it had to do with LOSIM per se. Maybe it had to do a little bit with LOSIM. But my point is that it seemed like it sort of went away, and this idea that we would have to import the savings clause into our LOSIM analysis sort of went away. But I'm starting to realize that I don't think it went away. I think it was there the entire time. And what happened was when this district looked at the statute and decided this applied to SERP and not LOSIM, somebody went to work. And where they went to work was at the Florida Senate. And they didn't tell anybody about it. They didn't disclose to anybody here that they were going to do it. And what they did was they snuck in 2508. And what is 2508? 2508 is not some sort of immaterial, send us a report card moment for the district. That is not what it is, okay? 2508 is a wholesale policy change that completely and entirely imports the savings clause, which is supposed to only do with SERP. The Florida savings clause, which may not have to do with SERP, but it's designed by Florida statute to deal with SERP, they are trying to import that into LOSIM. It is an absolute infection of LOSIM with a brand new policy change to import the SERP savings clause from the Florida statute into LOSIM, which has never been there before. And by the way, not only into LOSIM, but into any future regulation schedule. That has never been there before. I found myself asking, why do you have to codify something that you say is already codified? Because that's not what you're doing. What you're doing is you're adding not a language merely to certify what you're already doing. You're adding brand new language. And by the way, the language that's in the new bill in 2508, it's actually even more stringent than the savings clause. It goes even further. It adds section D in between lines 246 and 269. There's a section D that never appears in section 5 above. Okay, it is a complete and wholesale importation of the savings clause on steroids into the LOSIM process. And so the argument that this situation is merely being sold as, oh, well, we give you 70% of every dollar that you have, and therefore we merely would like you to certify that you're doing the things you're already required to do, that is in fact completely inaccurate. It's a lie, because we do not have to certify, nor do we have to abide by this savings clause on steroids under LOSIM. Or any other regulation schedule. And the only way that we have to do that is if 2508 is passed. And the reason 2508 is now tied to our money and tied to the entire Florida budget has nothing to do with getting a mere report card. It has to do with importing and infecting LOSIM with these bogus savings clause on steroids clauses that completely tie our hands. And that goes the same for lines 348 to 351. And so the argument to those folks that came up that they don't know what they're talking about, or they're clueless, or they don't have, where they were brought up to Tallahassee on false pretenses, it's just inaccurate. It's not true, because when you read the language of the statute, it's utterly clear. Now, the striking of the EAA reservoir and the addition of the Section 1B language, that's a concern. Now, that's where all that argument over notwithstanding came in, okay? Now, it's true that it still authorizes the projects in the suite of 1B to be funded. The question is, does it now dilute the funding that was available on a recurring basis to the EAA reservoir to the other 3 projects that are identified in 1B? If the answer is yes, which I think most people are looking at with great concern, then the argument by some of the senators that this does not cut funding to the EAA is a lie also, okay? Because if you have $64 million on an annual recurring basis being allocated to the EAA reservoir, and now you're splitting it between 3 other projects, guess what? The EAA has been cut. And so you just got to call it how you see it, and you got to tell people what you find, and you got to be upfront with people in my world. And to me, these people were not being upfront, okay? Restoring minimal flow levels to the lake and guaranteeing people 1 in 10 certainty, there is no certainty in what we do, okay? It's impossible to guarantee certainty in what we do, okay? There's a little thing up there called the weather, and we don't have any control over it. So the idea that these things are being passed as just these kind of mere bills with no real change, we can just do it as a conforming bill, this doesn't really have a big policy change, is just flat out false. I mean, the reality at the end of the day is I wish people would have simply come to us and asked us. We are already taking agriculture into consideration, okay? Nobody is diminishing that. We are taking agriculture into consideration. Sugar is part of our decision-making process, okay? It's not sugar we have a problem with. It's artificial sugar we have a problem with, okay? It's artificial, and that's what's going on right now. They are putting artificial sugar in the drink in an effort to prioritize themselves over others. And that is something that we should not allow occur.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I'm glad you went to law school. Time well spent. Mr. Bergeron.
Well, I'll give you the redneck cowboy version of this. But I want to compliment our Vice Mayor, Wagner. We are, and I am, and I know all of us are so honored that you're sitting here because your expertise is just overwhelming to let the public know what's going on here. You know, when you look at the board that the governor appointed, I could never be so honored that the diversity that sits here. And I've seen the best staff in the world, believe me, and I have thousands of people that work for me. And we're dealing with the largest restoration in the history of the world, environmental restoration. And we communicate with 9 million people down here in South Florida, and one-on-one a lot of times. And we're open ears, we're listening to the public, and everything we do is a balancing act. Balancing water supply, flood protection, and the environment. And I just can't see what the legislators are doing to make this political and be able to have the vision that our staff has, our board has, and all of our stakeholders that we communicate with. You know, we have the Everglades Coalition. We're meeting with 64 environmental groups. We meet with agriculture. We meet with the most important thing for the future of South Florida is quality of life for future generations, not poisoning our water, and making sure that developments in the right geographical areas and the most important natural resources are protected so we can continue to have economical growth and jobs and a quality of life in Florida. When it starts to get political up in Tallahassee, where they are controlling the will of the people that we listen to every day, constantly, the respect that we show to all of our stakeholders as we make all these decisions, there's no way that can be done in Tallahassee. And, you know, a lot of people don't realize that sitting on this board is nearly a full-time job at times. And I am so honored. I love the state, and I so honored to be a part of making a difference. And but once it becomes political, everything will slow down, and it won't happen. And there is no way. I do tours constantly with congressmen, U.S. senators, our state senators, constantly, and trying to educate them on, you know, the modified water delivery, water moving south, all the important things, the quantity, the quality, the timing, the distribution. And it's interesting what little bit they know and what they can learn. But we're hands-on right here in South Florida with 9 million people. And we study this constantly with the best staff in the world. And I just see this becoming political and tilting out of balance. Agriculture is important, but they have to be good stewards too as we achieve this. Industry is important. You know, the future home for future generations is important. You know, the balance. But I see this as them controlling in Tallahassee what we're interfacing here at a local way. It is not good, not good at all. And I think the public needs to really know what's going on here. Thank you.
Mr. Steinle?
Are we going around the horn? Yeah, I mean, my first comment is thank you both, Chauncey, for going up there and representing the district so professionally, and with balance and patience, from what I hear. I'm looking forward to watching. I know I shouldn't say that, but I'm looking forward to watching that whole meeting. And Scott, I mean, your insight is just amazingly helpful, and something that sort of exemplifies why this board is made up the way it is, representing different backgrounds, experience, and, you know, expertise. So I'm really honored to serve with you guys, with all of you. I guess I have to admit that I must be naive. I mean, I can't understand how anything like this could happen in state government, in any government. It's unbelievable to me. I mean, and we've been through this before, where these things are stuffed in the middle of the night, and the response eventually, and hopefully in this case, is swift, and hopefully it'll be more immediate in this case. But you know, this is clearly it's a last-minute hidden runaround to subvert the LOSUM process. I mean, and you know, that's a process like Ron, you were saying, 2 years plus that folks have talked to you, thousands of comments, meetings, tons, all stakeholders. And what this seems to me, and by the way, we sit here in front of the mission statement of the district, which is about balance. And since we've sat on this board, I don't think there's been imbalance in terms of delivering water to any of the constituents under our purview. I mean, ag included. We can't meet this mission with this bill. It's bringing balance to imbalance. So, I mean, I see this as clearly coming from some people who say in public, full force support of the EAA reservoir, and then in private and with their lobbyists, do something totally contradictory to kill a project they just don't like. So I agree. We need to do whatever we can to fight this. And I think the best way to do that is to bring transparency, which clearly the state legislature does not want in this process, transparency to this bill. We need to raise public awareness, and we need to make it clear that this is representing a minority stakeholder group at the detriment of the majority of Florida residents. Society, the environment, flood protection, everything. It's just, this is so frustrating to me and disappointing and shameful. But I think it's something I guess I'm going to learn from. We need to do our best to fight it. So, I mean, clearly we oppose this. I think I speak for everybody, and I would love to know the district is doing everything to bring awareness to what's going on here, because it is shameful.
Thank you, Mr. Steinle. Ms. Thurlow-Lippisch.
Yes. Well, when things get tough, I always try to find something to inspire me. And so I found something to inspire me. And I don't know if any of you know what this is, but this is an ancient coral reef from where they dynamited for the EAA stormwater treatment area, because Florida is built on a 6,000, 5,000-year-old ancient reef. And it also reminds me, I'll put it up here, like my triangle. It also reminds me that all life is about is change. And that is what we are going through right now. We are sitting on the biggest change that has ever come to the South Florida Water Management District in its history. In its history as the Everglades Drainage District, in its history as the Central and South Florida Flood Control District, and now the South Florida Water Management District. In our country, there have been many times, look at the civil rights movement, look at the fight for women for their rights, where we have had to fight for change. And people don't like to give up the status quo. They don't. No one likes to give up the status quo. Agriculture has been in a status quo position for a long time. I am part of agriculture. My grandfather was a major ag man at the University of Florida. Ben, I don't say this in any way, but I do. It's just the history. I was just up in Tallahassee looking through some archival information because, we forget that, and we have to appreciate agriculture. We do, even if we have to. I was thinking like I'm all mad, and then I go to the grocery store. I'm like, this is kind of hypocritical. But this state in the 1930s and 40s, we were trying to build an economy. Okay, my grandfather, who worked for IFAS and for the University of Florida and for Ben Hill Griffin, these people were coming out of the Depression. There was no food on the table. These people had nothing, okay? They were scraping it to make it happen. And they created this amazing agriculture EAA. That is part of the Central and South Florida plan, okay? And I respect that. I honor that. but we are not living in 1948. You cannot say things about black people that you may have said years ago. It's wrong. You cannot say things about women that you may have said years ago. You belong in the kitchen. You can't say it. It's wrong. We have moved beyond these things. Agriculture cannot say we are owed what we had in 1948. I respect them, but we cannot be in that place. We can't. And I look at this. I'm really not that surprised, to be honest with you. Look at 5003, what happened with 40E61. Do you remember that? Where we had a year of work and also people being involved, and then it was just smashed, and that was the end. It was changed by the legislature. Oh, well, we're God, you're not. We're in Tallahassee that takes 6-7 hours to get there, and you're not. You know, they wanted to move it. There was a constitutional amendment to move it to Tallahassee, the capital, to Orlando. And what they did really fast was they built the Capitol. So you could, I'm not kidding you, I was on the Constitution Revision Commission for 2 years. I mean, there is a reason why the power is way up there, and they like it like that. Okay? And I wanted to say that this is not over yet. This is not over yet. When I see my coral from 6,000 years ago, when I think of all that the people went through for Martin County since 2013, I mean, unbelievable. 5,000 people, rallies, kids. I mean, it's a culture. It's not just a movement. It's a culture. And Lonesome, they tried to divide us in Lonesome. I mean, they didn't mean to, but Lonesome kind of divided us. 2508 unites us. 2508 unites us. This is not over yet. We are united. We honor agriculture. Yes, you need water. We all need water. But the water in the state of Florida belongs to everyone, not just a group that was in power in 1948.
Thank you, Mr. Lippisch. Colonel Roman?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I really appreciate the comments that everyone has made up until now, and I happen to agree with many of the things that have already been said. I would like to thank you, Mr. Chair, for dropping everything and running to Tallahassee to represent this board. I watched the hearing, and I have a few comments on that, but I'd also like to thank Scott, the Vice Chair, for going through the bill and taking his time to make sure that we could capture the essence of it, because I know it takes a lot, and we're all busy. I felt in many ways that the citizens that went to Tallahassee to speak their thoughts on this bill were diminished. And I value public outreach, and I value the individual citizens' opinions, and I've always have. And I was very disappointed to see that happen. And in many cases, they were given 45 seconds. They just dropped everything, went to Tallahassee to speak, and spent money renting a car, hotel, or driving up all night. I'm not sure. Each case is probably different. And in some cases, 45 seconds. And in many cases, the public speakers were diminished by not understanding, having it all wrong, not really getting the essence of the bill. And it was really disheartening. I just really felt that the public should have been treated better, but that's my thought on that. I think that what this bill does is it slows everything down, as Mr. Bergeron said, and adds dysfunction. And I can't say that I'm surprised either, because when people are working together and things are progressing and we're making progress and 43 items are either started, groundbreaking, or finished up, I mean, this is what success looks like. And success is a team sport. And there are just some folks that can't accept a team that's working together. And I think this is part of it. And we should all be working together for Floridians everywhere, and for protecting our water, and for protecting our environment, which is at the heart of our economy here in Florida. And we should be doing everything. And the legislature and the governor should be a part of that, which the governor's leadership has shown to be the guiding light for this. And we're on board with it. So we should be working together. We should celebrate that success. The legislature's funding has been critical to some of these efforts. But, you know, some folks just can't accept that things are working well, things are working in a transparent way, and moving forward like they've never have before. And so I just want to say that I'm not surprised that this happened. And we should fight this in every way we can. And I would agree with you, Jacqui, that this has galvanized all of the stakeholders in this regard. And I just hope we're successful, because this will really gum up the works. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Meads?
Oh, boy. You're never going to lunch today. It's my turn. I'm kidding. So I want to start by thanking the Senate for confirming me and giving me another 4 years here. I want to thank staff. I want to thank Colonel Roman and Ben Butler for making that trip with me, that we went together. And if you don't think we had some fun in the midst of the pain, which does happen, just check out Ben's Facebook, Ben Butler, South Florida Water Management District Governing Board Facebook page, and you will see a picture that horrified my husband of me. But anyway, in an elevator. It's the one where we took the selfie in the elevator and I was too short. So, but I want to tell you, we are a family in 3 years. And like, I don't really we have gotten to know each other, haven't we? And you guys know them like I do, because we've gotten to know each other up here, and then occasionally we have these really cool, painful experiences together, like the confirmation hearing, and Ben Butler went first. And I want to tell you, you know, I'm a weeper, and that doesn't mean that I'm weak. It means that I have a soft heart. So Ben, if you didn't catch it, Ben made his opening statements and he went first. And Ben knew those senators in a way that I don't, never met. And Ben threw his credibility in our direction. The last thing he said was he asked to be reconfirmed, and he asked the Senate to reconfirm us, which was a kind, family, gentle, wonderful thing for him to do. It just shows the quality of person he is, and I want you to know that it was a fabulous, kind thing. Now to talk about Senate Bill 2508. I wanted to go up there. I didn't, but I want you to know that I will be there when this bill is voted on. I am going to stay up there for 2 weeks. If that's what it takes to catch this bill when it is voted on, I want all of those senators to look up, because I'm going to be up there, and I hope any of you that are willing to come with me in the sunshine without breaking any laws, I'm going to stand there with any of you who will come, and I will watch that vote, and I will watch. And so let me tell you what I did when this was over yesterday. I sent the Captains for Clean Water, who I've never given a dime, $11,000. And I'm sorry, I know that's not enough. And it's a weird number, but first I sent them 1,000, and then after it was over, I sent them 10 more, because I know those captains and a lot of those people that spoke, like Commodore Friedman. They are mine. These are my people. And I know their families. I know their mothers, their fathers, their children. And I know it hurts them to take a day off and not get paid. And then they come all the way to Tallahassee and they get 45 seconds because it's a real busy day. Well, of course, session is always busy. But these men drove in the middle of the night, took any flight they could get. And I call it the reverse raccoon look, right? These tanned faces and those sunglass lines. And there they were, one after another, after another, after another. And I was so proud of them and so grateful for what they did. That's not the only not-for-profit that I am going to send a check to. I have never given the Everglades Foundation a check. And this week, they will receive one from my family that will let them know how exceptionally grateful that we are, that they too would come, show up, and participate and understand and work all weekend. I have not yet seen Senate Bill 2508 because my staff was too busy hiking up to Tallahassee to deal with it. I will read it tonight, but I want to read you what Senator Jeff Brandes, is that how you pronounce his last name? He is a Republican from St. Petersburg. Clearly, he's an attorney. I haven't met him. I can't wait to meet you. He said, quote, "It's almost unfathomable," by the way, this is the Miami Herald, "it's almost unfathomable that we would move forward a piece of legislation without talking to the one group that predominantly it affects." He was referring to the Water Management District and the governor's office. Sorry, I got to get a tissue because I'm crying. You know, that's just wrong. It's wrong. A couple of years ago, I found myself in the Great Hall of Justice with Maine Justice, and they called and asked me to participate in the 25th anniversary of the amendment of the key tam statute, the false claims statute. And they asked me to attend because at the time I was the one single largest whatever successful plaintiff in the nation in terms of recovery. So it was a $750 million recovery, and the details don't matter. But Maine Justice, I mean the people who ran Justice back then called and took me to the Great Hall, and I stood where Bobby Kennedy stood, and I was just so excited. And I'm the only non-attorney. That happens to me everywhere I go. And there I sat with these great men, and really, they only invited me there to ask this one question. You said you never did it for the money. And if you didn't do it for the money, then that means that we can cap whistleblowers' compensation at $5 million, right? And this is what I said. We were there to celebrate. It took 25 years to get the key tam statute working, and in that particular year, we brought back more money to the federal coffers than any time before, billions of dollars. That statute works. And in the middle of the pandemic, if you don't think there's some fraud going on, if you don't think the key tam statute matters, you just wait in 2 years, 3 years, and you just watch. Here's what I said to Maine Justice. This is exactly what the pharmaceutical company that I filed this case against, did. They did exactly what you want to do. To have it working, and it's really working. And I'm a process person, unit processes, right? It's why airplanes stay in the air. It's how nuclear power plants run. It's how we run. You see how complicated it is. Once you get something going like we've got going here, you leave it alone and you let it go. You let it run. It has been 25 years in the making, 43 projects in 3 years. Do not touch it. You don't codify what's already been codified. Do you boil an egg twice? Do you boil an egg, peel it, and then boil it again and think you're going to be able to eat it? No. You don't codify what has been codified. I want to leave you with this. So I'm going to be there. Please come with me. Not only did I give those not-for-profits money, I'm telling you, all I've got is my passion, my ability to financially help the people who cannot help themselves in this fight, like the captains who need money to get there, my vote, my heart, and my willingness to come up here day after day. And if the Senate ever wants to talk to me again, I'll go. I'm taking you, Ben, and Charlotte. I'll go. Here's what I want to read to you. This is from Governor DeSantis' inaugural speech. Our economic potential will be jeopardized if we do not solve the problems afflicting our environment and our water resources. People want to come to Florida because of its natural beauty. Tourism is not only a pillar of our state economy, it helps spread the tax burden to non-Floridians, limiting taxes on our citizens. But this could be jeopardized if we do not solve our pressing environmental problems. As the great philosopher Yogi Berra remarked, if people don't want to come, nobody is going to stop them. For Florida, the quality of our water and environmental surroundings are foundational to our prosperity as a state. It doesn't just drive tourism. It affects property values, anchors many local economies, and it is central to our quality of life. The water is a part and parcel to Florida's DNA. Protecting it is the smart thing to do, and it's also the right thing to do. I will lead the efforts to save our waterways. We will fight toxic blue-green algae. We will fight discharges from Lake Okeechobee. We will fight red tide. We will fight for our fishermen. We will fight for our beaches. We will fight to restore our Everglades, and we will never quit. We won't be cowed, and we won't let the foot draggers stand in our way. We resolve to leave Florida to God better than we found it. One last couple of sentences here. You skip on down to the end. If we meet the challenges that lie before us, if we overcome the tribalism that has dominated our politics, if we set the interests of hardworking taxpayers as our true north, then I have no doubt that the state of Florida will cruise to bright new horizons. I believe that the governor of Florida is the smartest man in every room he walks into, probably, unless he meets with Elon Musk once in a while. He is probably the smartest man in every room he stands in. He's probably the best attorney in every room he stands in. So if there are politicians that want to take this on with him, the fight is between them. We are not policymakers. We sit here and we serve at his pleasure, we serve at their pleasure, and we do our jobs as best we can. We are family. I do not like the way the chairman was spoken to. I think that that is unbecoming on their behalf. I do not believe that we are not transparent, and I do not believe that we don't function under high accountability. Tim? Well, let me ask you, Drew, are we transparent? Do we need to do an investigation to make the Senate happy on transparency and accountability? I don't think so, because what I've learned in 3 years is that we function under state statute in everything we do, right? We can't even go through procurement the way, and we've had to go through classes, right? And so we now understand procurement. I never thought I'd need that, but I do. And we don't do anything without standard operating procedures. We're accountable to everybody. I mean, absolutely everybody on everything. And so I'm sorry that they say that, but I want you to know that I believe that all to be a false flag and untrue, and don't you believe that. We do what is right. That is what we are called to do, and we will continue to do that. That's all I have to say, except I will be there, I hope, unless God takes me to heaven before. I will be there, and I will watch. And I hope, Governor, that you veto this bill. If they vote it in, please veto this bill. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ms. Meads. I hate to do this, and I hate to diminish what you just said, but I need to go back and just see if you have any abstentions.
No.
Thank you. Mr. Martinez.
Kind of scared to go now. First of all, I want to sincerely apologize for having been late today. It's the first time I think I've been late since I've started my tenure. I blame it on Waze, by the way. I guess they haven't found a way to figure out how to foresee accidents that are going to happen right in front of somebody. So, but anyways, so real quick, I know we've taken a long, and most everything has been said, which I agree with 99.9% of. But obviously, thank you, Chairman Goss, for being the fearless leader that you are of our group and doing and representing us the way that you do. And this is going to really hurt me, but thank you, Scott. You did a great job, by the way. Oof, that was hard. You know, since I started here on this board, the first thing I did is I have met with every single stakeholder group out there. My door has been open. My office door has been open. I have met with many of them, many of you that might be out there today. I have visited with many of you. And in my 30-year life in private business as a developer, unfortunately, I got to see the ugly side of politics. And I thought, okay, so now you're kind of semi-retired. Wow, you don't have to deal with that anymore. And so as we embarked on our journey here as a board, and I met with all these groups, the one thing I always assured them is said, you know, you're going to have somebody that is going to look at every issue fairly. I don't have any preconceived biases. And I think I have proven that in the 2.5 or 3 years that we have been here, and I think every one of them can attest to that. And many of them have my cell. They call me when things are happening. And so we've had a great relationship. I've had a great relationship with all these stakeholders. But now 2508 comes. And I feel betrayed. I feel like I have been lied to. You know, this is kind of like the story of you're out there playing a game of baseball and this kid, the rich kid, comes up and he says, hey, I want to play. I said, okay, great. Go and play second base. He goes, no. I want to play. I want to pitch. And I said, no, you're not going to pitch right now. I really don't even know how good you are. Just get on second base. He goes, no, either I pitch or I take everybody's balls, everybody's bat, everybody's glove, and there's no game. And so he took everything with him, and he thought the game was over. But I'm here to tell you the game is not over. The game is not over. And again, I am very, very disappointed in the way this thing has played out. And I wish it would have been different. But I guess the rules are being rewritten. So we will continue to fight for what's right, like we have been in the years that we have all been together. And And we will continue to put the people of Florida first, and the right thing will happen, and I'm sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. Mr. Butler.
Get a pass?
You can.
No. To begin with, this is, I appreciate everybody's comments here. You know, I like sausage. I don't like to see it being made. You know, we've heard the analogy of politics to sausage making. Yeah. Mr. Chairman, thank you for going to Tallahassee. It's not easy to stand up there. We've all been up there in front of the Senate at one time or another, and it's never easy. I enjoyed our time in Tallahassee a couple of weeks ago. Glad it was before this week. And congratulations on your confirmation, ladies. Hey, I finally got confirmed for the first time. So I didn't get confirmed last time. I missed it by a couple of days. You know, it's great working with y'all. We're all rowing together. Scott, thanks for your analogies. Thanks for your analysis. Staff, thanks for the analysis. I still haven't read 2508 yet. You know, it came out over the weekend. I got work to do. I tagged cows Monday. I played catch-up Tuesday. I sat in the office and watched Chauncey Wednesday. And then I stayed in the office till about 9 o'clock last night. I got a whole list. We haven't seen each other in 2 months. We haven't been to Palm Beach in 3 months. I got a whole list of other poor comments that I want to say today. And I worked about 2 hours last night just kind of going through and writing down everything else I wanted to say. Obviously, I'm not going to get that in today. Later. We'll get it in later. You know, I haven't read 2508 yet. I believe, you know, I'm very conflicted. My senator sponsored 2508. I believe the district. I believe Scott's analysis. I believe Chauncey's analysis. I believe everybody's analysis that's around this dais that has read it. I believe Drew's analysis. I don't know what to think. You know, it's disappointing. We're working on Lonesome. God, it's been a 3-year process. I mean, frankly, it's before us. And I thought we were, you know, we're getting there. I mean, that's, you know, I think we were all rowing together. I hope this doesn't set us back. Again, it's sausage making. I don't want to belittle it. I don't want to belittle the issue. Somebody said it. They're naive. I'm very naive. In the end, I believe everything's going to work out, and it's going to work out the way it needs to work out. Fingers crossed, Charlie. Both. You know, I'm going to leave it at that.
Fair enough. Thank you very much, Mr. Butler. Appreciate your comments. I appreciate everyone's comments. Mr. Vice Chair.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'd just like to make a very brief comment before we close. Everybody has commented on the way that this particular bill made its course and how it raised some red flags and concerns. But I don't think we've closed the loop on the effect. And I just wanted to comment on some of the conclusions that I thought were the effect of the language in the bill. That bill would require us and hamstring us to manage water in an equitable manner, in a balanced manner for all stakeholders, including agriculture, and would require us in almost all circumstances to retain more water in the lake during the dry season than is probably equitably desired. And the result of that is twofold. Number one, it will starve the Everglades of much needed water during the dry season, but it will also create a higher lake stage as we reach the wet season, which will mean the water in the lake will go higher and we will be more predisposed to algal blooms and toxic algae discharges down the estuaries. And so there's two, I think, massive effects of artificially tying our hands with respect to how we recommend and manage water and lake schedules. That's number one. But number two, I think this is a point that has not been raised yet. It diminishes the credibility of our recommendations to the Army Corps of Engineers. I look at the Army Corps as a partner. I look at the Army Corps as a trusted partner. And when you're in a partnership with somebody, I think you expect your partner to be candid, honest, and truthful. And I think you expect them to be candid, honest, and truthful. The way that this statute is written, it forces us, it is compelled speech on recommendations that we give to the Corps. It's being forced under threat of money to give specific recommendations to the Corps, even if they're not the best recommendations. And the Corps will now know that. And so when they get our recommendations, instead of working with a trusted, honest, and candid partner, they're going to roll their eyes, take the fake recommendation, and throw it in the trash can. The partnership credibility is diminished when the district is forced to give recommendations under threat of death, monetary death, to the Corps. And I think it's an important point that has not been brought out. We should be able to give our best recommendations to the Corps, period. Taking all stakeholders into consideration. When you ask for a recommendation to a restaurant and the person giving the recommendation is forced to take into consideration that they must like pasta and they must like pizza and they must like chicken parmesan, guess what? When somebody gets a recommendation for Italian, they just roll their eyes because they know that you're forced to give it. And that's exactly what's happening, and it's exactly the effect of this statute. It's bad enough that it's going to create the toxic discharges. It will. It's bad enough that it's going to starve the Everglades of water during the dry season. It will. But it's also going to ruin the credibility of our recommendations with our partner, the Army Corps. And to me, when you're in a partnership, there's nothing more important than honesty, candor, and trust. And so I just want to make that point as we close here.
Yeah, thanks very much. I think that's an excellent point. I hadn't really thought of that. But you're right. And that's why this LOSUM process has been
Mr.
open
Chairman, can I
and
have just 30 seconds?
You
I
may.
know we're got a long schedule here, but I think our stakeholders need to really understand exactly. And you know, this is a full-time job, sitting here. And our stakeholders going to Tallahassee to try to talk to our legislators about issues that affect them here. And they don't even have the knowledge or the background and the understanding and all of the technical advice that we get from our staff, you know, on issues that you might as well tell someone to fly a rocket ship to the moon. I think our stakeholders trust us, and we have to be looking at water supply, our environment, all the environmental groups, all the conservation groups. We've got to have consideration for agriculture. But they can't be doing things in the dark of the night, agriculture, not wanting to be a part of the balance, wanting water that may be detrimental to the environment or detrimental to our discharges going to our estuaries and detrimental to 9 million people that live here. We're all in this thing together. And I think this board has really tried to balance this. And the day one stakeholder steps out wanting to not be a part of the balance that affects 9 million people in South Florida, shame on them. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Bergeron.